Roll Tide, everybody, and welcome to the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel. A little live action today. We appreciate all of you guys, and we got a very special guest. It's going to talk some LSU Tigers. It's the first playoff game of the playoff era. At least I feel like that. All right, like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Roll Tide, everybody. Let's get the show started. All right, look at the new intro song. I know all you guys are pumped up, and it's great to see Bryce Koon join us from 24/7 Sports, covers LSU. I'm Mick Gillispie. Welcome to the channel, everybody, and Roll Tide. And maybe there's some Tiger fans here. Go Tigers! We got a big matchup coming up on Saturday, Bryce, and this is the first playoff game of the playoff era, right? I mean, Now we got the 12-team playoff, and now the loser of this game is definitely out of it, I think.
Yeah, no, and Mick, appreciate you having me on, man. Always love talking, not just football in general, but especially this matchup. I know we talked about it last year, but you hit the nail on the head, man. I mean, this game every single year when you go back to divisions, it felt like this was determined who would represent the SEC West in Atlanta, and then now you look at what you have, coming this season, and the fresh off. A big night last night in terms of playoff rankings and everything going on. I mean, it's fun, and I was skeptical about the 12-team playoff, Mick, but I love it for this fact of one fan base is going to go home not feeling too good. The other one's going to be excited about the next week and the week after that.
Look, I'll be honest with you, Bryce. I was not a fan of the 12-team playoff. I like this seeking perfection, and I also like the fact that the regular season to me was the playoff. Right? It just had that vibe, man. Like I thought, well, you lose a game and you lose two, and you're really out of it. And then there was that Mike Leach, man. And when I'm down in Key West every year, kind of regrouping after the season, and I'd go by Mike's favorite bar and sit there at Captain Tony's, and I'd drink a cold beer, and I would think about life. And he had said one time, hey, they have a playoff in every level of football, right? He's going through Pee-wee football. Hey, you get to the playoff, right? You have the regular season for the playoff. He was like high school football, regular season, and then a playoff, right? NFL, regular season. I said, yeah, you know what? The last mango in paradise, as Jimmy Buffett said, is definitely right there at Captain Tony's. And he turned my thoughts, and I got to tell you, it is exciting. And one of the things I didn't anticipate was a game like this, where both of these teams have two losses, being a significant game. And on other seasons, this is what the first time these two teams have had two losses in a long time, but it still means a lot.
Yeah, it still means a lot, and you bring that up. I mean, I think a lot of, and just talking with LSU fans down here, there's a back against the wall mentality, and I think Alabama feels the same way. Like you said, I mean, this is a de facto elimination game, and look, I'm not going to discredit any of the bowl games. Hey, Mick, I'm a big fan of what they're doing with the Pop-Tart Bowl down there in Orlando. It's fun. It looks cool.
The Cheez-It Bowl, man.
Yeah, the Cheez-It Bowl. All the stuff they got going on, but for lack of better words, I mean, one of these teams is going to be vying for one of those bowl games. The other one's going to be vying for a spot to play around Christmas time and in the first round of the playoffs. So it's a big difference. I like it. I enjoy it. And to a certain extent, Mick, I'm glad I was a little bit wrong about this 12-team playoff, at least for this season, because this looks like it has not just LSU, Alabama, but across the board. I mean, you got Ole Miss, Alabama, in that slot right before the appetizer to the main course there on Saturday. So it's going to be fun to watch how things shake out, but this game to me, man, it's what it's about. It's winner keeps moving on, loser goes home, and it's going to be a fun matchup.
What do you think about LSU's program right now? You cover them for 24/7 Sports. You've been around since Brian Kelly took over. Feels like last year was a little bit of a setback, but maybe they got ahead of schedule getting to the SEC championship game his first year, beating Alabama, obviously. And then now this year.
I think the best way to go about this is fans down here still have a bad taste in their mouth from last year in terms of what you had offensively. I
Right.
mean, Mick, I think if you're a fan of any team, you can acknowledge that what LSU put on the field offensively was national championship type. I mean, that's a group that you can win with. Defensively, it's not making a bowl game type of defense. I mean, it was just stark contrast on both sides of the football. So entering this season, look, we talk about all through SEC media days and all through the summer months. We kept harping on this. There's the idea that there is a year 3 jump, and it's not just an idea. There's a year 3 leap everywhere Brian Kelly has been. The problem, Mick, is he's never been in the SEC. He's never faced the gauntlet of week in, week out, what you have to face in the SEC. And so while a lot of people said, yep, the year 3 leap, this is a playoff team, I was a little more subdued, I think, in my expectations just because of what we knew about this roster. I still think this program's trending in the right spot. I mean, yeah, you had course correction. You completely misfired on your defensive, staff coaching hires when you initially got here. I like what they've done on the defensive side of the football. It's been better. They need to get better Jimmys and Joes. But overall, the fan base, they want to win this game, no doubt about it. My preseason prediction was this is a team that should compete for one of those 12 spots. And look, we're here on November 6th, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. So it's not far off from the realist standpoint. Depending on what happens Saturday night, though, and how it looks, that's going to tell you a lot. But I think this is a team that when you go back 3 years ago, Mick, I mean, they rolled into Brian Kelly's first year in that bowl game right before he got there. They had 39 scholarship players.
Yeah, right.
It was a far cry. It was just, from the top of the mountain in 19 to absolute depths in 2020 and 2021. So I'm interested to see what, this looks like after the game. But I think this program's okay. They're healthy. They're building that NIL war chest that I think is people don't realize isn't as flush as maybe the A&Ms and other Texases of the world. They're trying to get there. It's still a big brand. So we'll see. I'm not ready to put Kelly on the hot seat in terms of anything, just mostly due to that buyout that he has. But in terms of a lot of things, not really ready to push that button yet. But we'll see. I mean, look, the SEC, it rests for no one. I mean, there is a win now mentality, especially at a place like here at LSU.
Yeah, look, I'm with you on that. And I wonder how this rivalry is going to be without Nick Saban. I mean, the whole thing was built off Nick Saban. Alabama, for the most part, has dominated LSU when you look at the history of the two programs. But the Tigers, they've had good years and they've beaten Alabama. It's not like, it's not like they're Ole Miss or Mississippi State. But
yeah,
still, Bama's won way more than they've lost. But then when Saban came after being at LSU, there was just this, this different energy, you stole our girlfriend energy. And this thing went from kind of just being, to being one of the biggest games in the SEC, if not the biggest game in the SEC. It also didn't hurt that both teams were really good. But now that Saban's gone, I wonder what this thing's going to feel like. Is it going to go back to the way that it was before Saban?
I think there's certainly a case to be maybe made for that. I mean, you can't deny the outside noise that Saban brought to this. And I mean that in the best way possible, like you talked about. I mean, it's not like it was a distraction, but it was obviously a storyline. And I mean, every single year, what did we see on the ESPNs, the CBSs, the Foxes of the world? They were talking about, yep, well, he coached back there and I won the title in 03 in Baton Rouge. And you're seeing it this year because he's on College Game Day. I mean, that's a big talking point this weekend.
Yeah.
What's going to be the reception of Nick Saban when he takes the stage on Saturday for College Game Day there on LSU's campus? So I think that as long as both teams, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, Mick, I think it's okay to say that Alabama's going to take a step back in just a little bit because Nick Saban was that good. I mean, it's just hard to match that. I'm not saying they're going to be a perennial 7 to 8 win team. I don't think you're crazy if you're saying that. They're still going to be Alabama. They're still going to have great talent and good coaching. But I think it's safe to say that it might lose a little bit of the luster with this new blood in the SEC, but there's going to be a lot of people, Mick, that are, around our ages that are going to remember, from 2000 to 2020, those battles. And for a section of the fan base, it's still going to mean a lot. So could it lose a little bit of the luster? Maybe, but as long as, folks like yourself, myself, and people who watch this on, the SEC on CBS every single November 9th, that was the game. They're always going to hold this rivalry, near and dear to their heart.
Bryce Koon works with 24/7 Sports, covering LSU, longtime friend as well. So it's always great to hang out. Is that a Mercer helmet behind you?
Yeah, man. I spent 3 years on the Mercer radio team. So
Did
they
you?
hooked me up.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
Hey,
play
yeah.
them
So, hey,
after this week.
yeah, top 10 FCS team right now. So shout out to the Bears.
Are they? Oh man, I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
ask you about them before you get off here then, because I'm sure we're gonna have nobody to come on and preview them. But so let's talk about what makes this LSU team great. And or good. I don't think
Yeah.
either Alabama or LSU would really be in the great category, but good category. To me, I watch them and I think Lacey is a tremendous wide receiver. And it
Mhm.
just seems like LSU always has one of these guys. Like last year, Neighbors to me was the best wide receiver we faced.
Mm.
So Lacey Anderson, who we know about him. He's the guy that I think Nick Saban was talking about, where he said most of the guys that transfer, they can't play, but one guy, I wish he would have stayed,
Mm.
and then he's become kind of a go-to guy for this Tigers team. They got the tight end, and then Garrett Nussmeier throwing the ball around. It seems like they're really driven by the pass.
Yeah, it passes bread and butter. Joe Sloan, OC, co-OC, but he really kind of controls everything. He's getting looks right now at head coaching jobs at the G5 level that have already opened up. You kind of hit the nail on the head when you talk about Kyron Lacey. Yet, I don't think there's a Malik Neighbors or a Brian Thomas Jr. on this roster. Those were 2 first-round picks, and they're playing fairly well.
Yeah.
But you have Kyron Lacey, who's a dynamic receiver. Aaron Anderson has been a revelation. I mean, Mick, you go back to this game last year. What did Nick Saban say to him in the post-game handshake? Hey, you should have stayed, joking back and forth like that, because Anderson wasn't a big part of the offense. And this year, he has lined up everywhere. He has run a plethora of different routes. I mean, his route tree has gotten so much better.
Right.
And they've been pleased with it. And then Mason Taylor, who I think is an NFL player at some point when he makes the jump. He's been quiet lately, but he's still a part of this offense. So, it's a stark contrast, though. The LSU, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, does not like to run the ball. They can't really run the ball at all, but they're going to pass and they're going to throw and throw. And I do think that's a little bit of what has gotten them in trouble, Mick, is when you throw the ball 40, 50 times a game, you're going to put the ball in harm's way when you feel like you got to make the play. That's what they felt like 2 weeks ago in College Station. Nussmeier tried to play hero ball, play high risk, high reward. When it works, everyone loves you. When it doesn't,
Right.
that's when the boo birds come calling. And so I think this offense is good. I'm excited to watch this matchup against Alabama's defensive backs, which I don't know your thoughts. I think they've gotten better. They got a lot of criticism earlier in the year. I do think they've gotten better. They've gelled a little bit on the back end. But this offense, it's going to be the pass. And that's going to be, if Alabama shuts down the pass for Garrett Nussmeier, hats off to you, because you're probably leaving Baton Rouge with a win.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm guessing that's got to be the game plan for Bama. Now, I think Bama's biggest weakness to me, outside of discipline, third downs, and Milroe not running the ball, which to me, if they do those 3 things, I feel really confident about this team. But they also haven't been as good as they've been in the past at stopping the run, and that's where Tennessee beat them. And it seems like in this game, that's not really the strength of LSU. And when John Emery went down, who I think is a really fun, exciting player, and you tell me, but it just doesn't seem like anyone's kind of gotten into that role of being like a star running back, more like guys that you hand the ball off to.
Yeah, and you talk about that John Emery going down. I mean, he was impressive in that season opening game against USC. They did lose, but you kind of saw something there. Like, okay, he's finally healthy. Came off the ACL last year, and then just brutal news for a kid that has just battled so many injuries throughout his career. Came in so highly touted. But you look elsewhere. I mean, look, okay, let's start Josh Williams. He's been in the program since 2019, former walk-on. He's a good blocker. He's a good cerebral player. He's not explosive in terms of the run game. Caleb Jackson, the guy who made headlines last year with his flashy play, his brutal stiff arms, has really underperformed. I mean, he's been a disappointment for this run game. And then they've really had to rely on true freshman Caden Durham, who I think can be special. But Mick, this is a brutal conference. Relying on an 18-year-old to kind of shoulder a run game and really help out the rest of the offense, that's a lot to ask. And so Caden Durham, I like him. I mean, he's shown in spurts where he can be a physical, balanced runner, but it's just a lot to ask. And so you're right, to your point. I mean, there's no Dylan Sampson on this roster that beat Alabama up pretty bad. And I'll say it here. LSU probably wishes they'd have kept the Baton Rouge native home in Dylan Sampson and he wouldn't have got away to Tennessee. But they don't have that, and so that hurts them. The offensive line, while they're per metrics, they're pretty much elite in pass pro. brutal in run blocking. So it's just not been something that's been a strength for them. Recruiting wise, they're trying to build there. I think they've got a nice class coming in, in the next year and two with that. But right now, it's just not something that you said Alabama struggles with. Well, LSU's not very good at either. So it's a battle of who can't be the worst, I think, in that category.
Great to see all you guys hanging out with us in the comments section. Please give us a thumbs up as you hang. And look, I don't like getting into politics, but I see you guys want to talk about it. So congratulations to the next president, who was the former president, President Trump. So a lot of you guys have dropped that in there. And I don't want to ignore you for that, but I stayed up, watched the election myself last night. The late great Brett Elmore and I were on different sides of the political spectrum, but he's still best friend you could have ever asked for. And I just hope that we all kind of do that today. And if you're happy, then congratulations. And if you're not, hey, we're here to talk sports with you, and thank you for being part of it. But thumbs up, guys. That's a way of saying Roll Tide. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe and take advantage of that code right there. Bama Tailgate at newlifeart.com. I've got my LSU print right here from Daniel Moore. Do you know these Daniel Moore prints?
I've seen them. I believe my
right
dad has a beautiful one. I mean, they are. It's a cool looking piece.
Yeah. That one's from when Bama played LSU in the Natty. I was sitting at the 50-yard line, upper deck though, first row, and it was in the dome. But this game's meant so much to the conference. Oh, guys, if you use that promo code, 20% off on prints like that one right there, Restoring the Orders, that one at newlifeart.com. And we appreciate you for doing that. But this game has meant so much over the years, because the winner of this game won the West. Now we don't have a West anymore. And I don't know that either one of these teams is even going to make the SEC championship game. But I don't know that that's not a bad thing. I mean,
yeah,
the SEC championship game has jumped the shark. You don't need it anymore, because all you're trying to do is win the national championship, and it's just an extra game that you would have to have. So I feel like this is one of those games where the winner of this game may be in really good position to make a run, just because they don't have to mess with that game.
I wholeheartedly agree. I was talking with LSU's communications folks last night, and we were doing player interviews at the facility, and I was like, so, do y'all think that at some point the SEC title game is going to become even more obsolete, in terms of that? And they're like, yeah, there's definitely a case. And they kind of planned it out like this. So, LSU has the one conference loss. If they ran the table, and I don't know how much you've looked into this, way above my level of education, Mick, to be able to decide who in the world's going to the SEC title game. We got a crazy 5-way tie right now, I believe it is.
Right. What if it turned into it ended with a tie? Like everybody with 2 losses.
One of my co-hosts on my podcast, he looked it up, and the 6th option is literally people in Birmingham just pulling names out of a hat. And that would be hilarious if we got that far.
That would be fun.
So, but to that point, play the hypothetical game. I know Alabama's got the 2 conference losses. It is what, they'd have to have some other things fall for them. But LSU has the 1. Let's say they make it, but you lose the SEC title game. You finish, 10-2 regular season, 10-3 in the SEC title game. You might be better off going 10-2 and not playing in the title game, and instead of getting that 3rd loss. So I wholeheartedly agree with you there. I think if both teams can, if the winner of this is going to benefit from not having played the SEC championship, because they both have those 2 regular season losses, I'd be hard pressed to find a team that, would have the resume to beat out some of the other teams across college football as a 3-loss SEC runner up. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think it's a fantastic talking point, not just for this game, but for what's going to happen in Ole Miss, Georgia, earlier that day. So it's going to be interesting. I think we could be heading to a world where, Nick, is it crazy to think that teams could opt out of playing an SEC championship game? Yeah, I don't know if that's crazy.
I don't know either. It is great to win them, and we've done that a lot at Alabama, including last year. But at the same time, it now that you got to go through this gauntlet at the end of the season, playing that game makes it just that much harder to do. And it's not like baseball where you can just go out there and you're going to play 162 games. So what's another game? Football is a very physical, demanding game. Guys get hurt. Your game plan gets exposed. So sometimes it's better not to play as many games than to go into this. And then you lose that game. And then does that keep you out of the college football playoffs? So you're right. Maybe some teams are going to opt out. A couple questions. I see you guys have got some questions in the comments. And if you want to ask Bryce any questions about LSU, get those in there now because we'll finish the show with some questions. But let's talk LSU's defense.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me finish on offense. There's a significant injury on the offensive line. Tell us about that. And then how does that affect their ability to run and throw the football?
Yeah, obviously you're referring to, veteran guard, 4-year player. Garrett Dellinger is out for this game. He had tightrope ankle surgery. So, no shot that he plays in this game. And LSU's going to have to worry about what the future is, at that position. They're going to slot in a young player, Paul Mabinga, originally from the state of Georgia. He played in that second half, Mick, of the Texas A&M game. And, I thought he held his own in terms of his first real game action. I mean, you're asking a young player to come in a hostile situation. And I'll say this, credit to Mike Elko because they identified it. I mean, LSU has a first-year starting center. Now you've got a first-year starting left guard, and they used their good defensive line to attack that guard center combination the whole second half, and LSU couldn't do anything. So, I think that when you look at Alabama's defensive front, that's something that this staff has to key in on. Okay, we know they've got the good tackles. Like, we know you got a first-round talent at tackle, probably a first-round talent at the other side. But in the interior, that's where we can hit you, and that's going to affect the run game. I think it's going to, cause Garrett Nussmeier, and you'll appreciate this, the baseball guy you are. I asked him last night, I said, hey, you do a lot of off-platform throws. Like, where's the comfortability? He goes, I played shortstop in high school. And I said, all right, who was the favorite player? He goes, people are going to hate this, but I grew up a Yankees fan. I like Derek Jeter. So I was like, okay, it makes sense. It makes sense. The Jeter in the hole type of play. So we're going to have to see more of that out of him. Those off-platform throws that I think when he is successful with them, that's why NFL scouts say, okay, that's what you got to do in the NFL to be successful. But it's high risk, high reward, Mick, and that's my worry and the cause for concern. So Paul Mabinga will be probably the starting left guard in this game. We'll see how it goes. I mean, that's something that Alabama is probably circling, and that staff is saying, okay, we have to attack this early and often to have success.
Yeah, and that's where Alabama's been strong is the front seven this year. And you mentioned the defensive backs, a lot of guys without experience, but the safeties have done a really nice job. And the defensive backs have gotten better. And then they pitched a shutout last time against Missouri. And it's been the offense that Alabama has, they're still averaging like 35 a game, but they just haven't been as dominant as we expected with Jalen Milroe struggling. But last year it was this game where Milroe finally just started to run the ball with authority. And that's what I feel like it's going to take, because what makes him so dynamic is his ability to run the football. And you saw it last year. And I know that wasn't as good of a defense as this one for LSU. So give us a breakdown of what makes this defense different than last year, what the strengths are and weaknesses too.
Well, it first starts off with the coaching staff. So Brian Kelly completely overhauls the coaching staff. He brings back Blake Baker, who was the linebackers coach under the previous regime. He was the DC at Missouri, had a fantastic year. Missouri put up a decent amount of players in the NFL draft last year off that group. Darius Robinson comes to mind off that Missouri defense, who was a solid player. And, you guys saw, just a couple weeks ago, offensively, Missouri's not very good, but defensively, I think they missed Blake Baker and what he brought to that group. So it's been an overhaul of that. Obviously, Alabama fans familiar with the name Bo Davis comes over from Texas, the defensive line coach. And, Mick, I was very bullish on this group needing elite coaching on the defensive side of the football to be good, because I still don't think that the personnel is where they need to be. And I think that's a shared sentiment now that we're 9 games into the season. But it's a situation where, we watched during fall camp, and I outlined this on a show earlier this morning. LSU coming into the season had one player that had played meaningful snaps on the interior of the defensive line. It was Jacobian Guillory. After week 1, he tears his Achilles. So you're left with a 6th-year player from Wisconsin that transfers in, not really known as a disruptor. You've got a very successful Division II transfer. You've got a JUCO transfer that, look, you don't know what the jump from D2 and JUCO is going to be for kids jumping straight into the SEC. You've got a converted defensive end, and you've got a converted true freshman defensive end. all those guys playing the interior. Mick, first off, LSU fans were a little bit ticked off because they're like, this is not the LSU defense we've come to know. That from a personnel standpoint, that's not acceptable. And for all intents and purposes, I mean, it's hard to be worse than they were last year, nearly in the hundreds in every single statistical category. But Blake Baker has found a way to make things work. And a big part of the success and a big key in this game, I think, is both the defensive ends. The interior defensive line has held its own. But where LSU's been very good is the pass rush and being able to see a guy like Braden Swinson, who has emerged from what was a rotational guy to a bona fide, NFL draft pick now. Not just a guy that could sneak in the back, into the draft, but maybe he's a second or third round pick with the production he has put up so far this season. Savion Jones on the other side has been a guy that has always had potential, hasn't really realized it. Shout out to Kevin Peoples and Blake Baker. Kevin Peoples, that edge coach, who has really worked with him on his pass rush repertoire, and they've been good at that. So the front seven for LSU, Mick, I would say is definitely the strength of this team. Blake Baker's aggressive. They have been overly aggressive at times. Go back and watch the film against Marcel Reed and what he was able to do, against this team. But when you look at the weaknesses you mentioned, I still don't love the safety position at LSU. I think it's guys that are more suited to play the run, not the pass. We've seen them have some busted coverages this year. Ole Miss comes to mind. USC came to mind in week 1, and then last week, they run Marcel Reed over and over again, and then he hits you over the top because your safety's creeping up too much. So for as good as the front seven has been at times, that Ole Miss game comes to mind, Arkansas comes to mind on the road, the secondary at times has faltered to a point where it kind of evens out, if that makes sense. So I think there's been growth. There's tangible growth that you can see out of this defense. Still a far away from where it needs to be, far away from what LSU fans are used to. And then just overall, they've got to play disciplined. I mean, I know it's such an easy coach speak answer, and I'm sure Alabama fans are sick of hearing that word out of Kalen DeBoer's mouth. We got to play more discipline. We got to do this on the road. But it's true. I mean, when LSU has struggled, it's because they've gotten outside of themselves. You've got individual guys kind of just freelancing, doing what they want to do, and it's gotten them in trouble. It's not gap sound. It's not assignment sound football. And so against a guy like Milroe, curious to hear your thoughts here too. I mean, if I'm Alabama, I'm running them more than they have because LSU hasn't shown the ability to stay disciplined over the course of a 60-minute game against the quarterback run.
Yeah, look, that's one of my keys. I think that's why Alabama lost to Tennessee, and also Vanderbilt, with the fact that Vanderbilt also kept the ball away from him for so long. Yeah. But I mean, he's got to run the ball. When he's in the pocket, that's just not where his success lies. It lies with him running. So no, I agree. I think he's got to run the football to have success and for Alabama to be a winner. So yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. All right, let's do a couple questions before you pop out of here, and I'll swing me back over there. Appreciate all you guys. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and thanks for being here. And Bama Buck, hey, thank you, man. Appreciate it. And here's one right here. Hey, when Milroe has turnovers, we struggle. When he doesn't get careless with the ball, we'll get the win. I mean, I think that's any team. And that was kind of like Garrett Nussmeier last week, who was kind of careless with the football. And that's kind of been an issue for LSU at times.
Oh, it has. And you mentioned, quarterback play across the SEC. We've seen high turnover rate. I mean, Carson Beck was a guy that a lot of people had slated, including myself, as a guy who could be one of the top picks in the NFL draft. And he's been disappointing. And, Garrett Nussmeier has at times, Mick, it's just been boneheaded decisions. And I think it's been a guy who feels the pressure of, we don't have a run game.
Right.
I've got to throw the ball 50 times. And sometimes mentally, and I'm sure you've seen this in your time covering this sport, guys get in their own head to where they feel like they have to do everything. And I think that's where Garrett Nussmeier got into trouble. So I wholeheartedly agree with Jim's statement there about that, because look, turnovers kill any team, but man, they really killed LSU in College Station at any chance of winning that football game. And I don't care how rowdy the environment is at home, and what that could do to Alabama. If you're giving a team like Alabama extra possessions to work with and short fields, it doesn't matter how much your defense has improved. It doesn't matter all the other factors. You're setting yourself up for a long night.
All right, here's one here. I don't know who Major Burns is. What is it? Is he transferred in or something?
No, so Major Burns starting safety, and it's kind of alludes to what I was talking. So it's a good question here. Major Burns starting safety for LSU. He's a guy that the best way to put it, Mick, and I mentioned I hinted at this earlier. I don't love the safety position for LSU in terms of pass coverage. Now they've moved Major Burns in kind of this star role, and it kind of alludes to the fact of defending the quarterback run. He was kind of the guy, along with Whit Weeks at the linebacker position, that mirrored what Taylon Green would do, and so I could see
Okay.
and Lenora Sellers. So, for lack of better words, and I'm not the only media entity in the Baton Rouge area that says this, Mick. When you limit the amount of yards from the ball that Major Burns is, he's a better player. And space and open space, it can get rough. So I think you're going to see him probably play that star role, move up closer to the line of scrimmage. He'll rush the passer a little bit. So, no, it's a good question because it does talk about how they're going to try to defend, Jalen Milroe in this offense on Saturday night.
Awesome. Well, it's a lot of fun hanging out, man. How can people follow you at 24/7 Sports covering LSU?
Yeah, of course. If you want to hear more about, the LSU side of things, what we think about the game, I'll hint at it, Mick. They'll probably like what I have to say more about it. Alabama fans will in terms of the outcome on Saturday night and where I'm leaning. I am leaning towards the Crimson Tide.
Are you
here as of Wednesday? I
okay,
am, Mick.
well,
I am.
Tell me this. Tell me
Yeah.
this. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah. So, real quick,
Huh.
I think that both teams are flawed. I think that's we can say that both teams have their flaws. I really am concerned about LSU's inability to stay disciplined defensively in terms of gaps. And you can't do that. I mean, we all know what Jalen Milroe can do when it's off script.
Right.
We've seen that. But if you can't stop the design runs, I know Alabama likes to motion a little bit more prior to the previous offenses. If you can't keep your eyes true to what your role is, they've struggled with that. They struggled with that against Marcel Reed. They were good against Taylon Green. They weren't good against Lenora Sellers earlier in the year. And, so I am leaning Alabama here as of Wednesday, at 11 o'clock Central. That's where I'm sitting. I kind of like the Crimson Tide's ability to come in and win this game, but it wouldn't surprise me either way. I don't know your thoughts on it. I'm sure you'll reveal that maybe not today, but later on in the week where how you do your prediction show. But I'm not one of those LSU media members that's really necessarily bullish on LSU winning this game just based off of home field advantage. Don't get me wrong. It's a factor. Alabama's lack of discipline is a factor, but you still got to play the game on the field. And I just don't know how much I trust LSU's front seven to stay disciplined.
Yeah, no, I haven't really assessed it yet. I'm kind of just part of this is talking to you for me, and we'll get together on Friday at the Bama for the Bama Tailgate show. And then, that we'll kind of get together there with Coker and probably Brian Anderson and the rest of the crew. And I'll make, kind of my assessment when it's all said and done. Alabama's got to be more disciplined. I know it's like you said, coach speak, but they have to. The penalties have been bad. Milroe's got to be more aggressive running the ball. But I also don't feel like they've played their best since the first half of the Georgia game. And I mean, Bama's a really unique team because they have the potential to have a disaster, or they have the potential to me to run the table. I mean, they can be as good as anybody, but it's just been, how do you be consistently good? So I'm excited to see kind of how this thing turns out, because get by this one, and then you got Mercer, which, by the way, tell me a little bit about Mercer, being that you spent some time there, if you know anything about this team. And then, and again, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun. I know there's a lot of Mercer fans that are excited to make a November trip to Tuscaloosa. And I'm pretty sure I've got some family members that'll make the trip. My younger sister went to school there, so she's a Mercer alum. And, look, it's a team that not a lot of people know. Their head coach left this past offseason, and he's kind of been a part of the renaissance up at the Naval Academy in their offense.
Really?
He's the OC at Navy now. And so they dipped back into the D2 ranks, hired a coach, and, man, outside of a loss against Samford, they're looking like they could run the table in the Southern Conference and be one of those top 8 seeds at the FCS level. So it's a solid FCS team. I mean, obviously you get into the talent gap and all that kind of stuff as well. But I believe it's a 2 p.m. kickoff there, local time. 2 p.m. kickoff, Eastern or Central, something like that. I mean, I know Mercer fans are excited about it. Just being able to go experience an SEC stadium. And look, Mick, in today's day and age of college football, and when I was at Mercer, we had guys, we talked to them in the hotel before the game. They said, hey, this is an opportunity for NFL film. Like, if you can put something on film that's impressive, maybe you can make a practice squad. Maybe you're more likely. Or the portal. You never know.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
not that Alabama's going to pick you up, but maybe, a Sunbelt team says, hey, they look pretty good against Alabama. So I think it's a good opportunity for those kids. And being around an FCS program, and I'll say this too, these bye games, man, they really are big. I was able to firsthand see what it does for an athletic program like Mercer. They're building a brand new indoor batting facility and pitching facility for baseball based off one of the games they did a couple years ago. So it is really cool to see. And it's I love the Mercer Bears. Don't know how much of a chance they've got on Saturday. I'd probably take Alabama in the points in that one.
All right. Well, I like that. I like all that you said, Bryce. And you guys will like Bryce as well. 24/7 Sports. He covers LSU. And we honestly love talking to you every year. Guys, I want to tell you this, too, that our show's always brought to you by our friends at Pearl River Resort over in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Now's a great time to go to the sports book and the Timeout Sports Lounge. If you play $50, and that may be taking Bryce's picks and take Alabama the next two games in a parlay, you can go play Dancing Rabbit Golf Course, which is the Augusta that you can play. You don't even need a membership for $40. So Silver Star, Golden Moon Casino, they got table games and slots, all the fun that you would expect. And you don't have to go all the way to Vegas. An hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 hours and change from Birmingham, really close anywhere in the state of Alabama or nearby. So thank you to them. Thank you to you, Bryce. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Roll Tide, everybody.
To Pearl River Resort.